Mr. B, how are you, sir?
I'm very good, Al. How are you?
Not too bad at all. Very, very excited for today. Really good to get you on the line. We're just discussing last week how really the two worlds coming together from a personal training perspective, where we're fundamentally looking at healthy raw ingredients, but it ends up being a little bit bland when we put together these recipes. So it'd be really good to get an insight of a chef of how to make these dishes a little bit more tasty and a bit more about lifestyle. Often when we do a plan, you can follow something that's quite bland for 6, 8, maybe 12 weeks, but really what we want to be looking at is what can people be eating as a lifestyle change, not just eating for themselves, but eating for the whole family. So really excited to see how we can...
I mean, one of the things, as you know, I'm super passionate about is just eating and taste, and the food, and having nice tastes and nice flavors.
Yeah.
But also having no processed food. So having everything as a single ingredient that you cook with as much as possible. I know sometimes you can't do it, but on the whole, you can make things yourselves and they taste so much nicer when you do than if you buy them. Yeah. And there's loads of reasons for that we can go over in the coming weeks, but one of them is the increased use of salt and sugar in processed food, which you'll see in the recipes we do. There's virtually no sugar and there's just the right amount of salt.
Sounds good. All right then, let's get to it, shall we?
Are we ready to go on our goat cheese pesto?
Let's go. Let's give it a whirl.
The first stage, and it's a good cooking technique, this, is learning how to make a pesto. And the reason it's a good cooking technique is because you can actually make a pesto with anything. A pesto really has got to have some oil, some herb, and preferably some vinegar with a little bit of salt. But if you were having something that was different flavour, today's one is with basil. But if you wanted, and you were making something to go on a fish, you could have dill in there. You could have any herb that goes with the meat you're having. You could make it into a quick pesto or pesto equivalent, and it will enhance anything for flavour. And it doesn't have very many calories. I know there's some oil in there, but it's still a little bit of it on the side of the plate is not going to make a difference to your meal, and it's going to make things taste delicious. So the first thing to do, now, I believe, Alan, you're making double the quantity of the recipe today.
I'm going for double, yeah. I'm going to treat
you a single. And this is a good tip for the members out there, because some recipes are scalable, i.e. you can times everything by 2. And some recipes, when you double them, you don't times everything by 2. So whenever that happens, we'll say so on this series, but unless we say so, you can just double the ingredients to make more. So if you wanted to make it for 4, you times everything by 4, and it will work with this recipe, no problem whatsoever. So if you're making it for 2, then let's start with the basil. We need the basil, we need the olive oil, we need cherry vinegar, and we need a little bit of salt and pepper. When you're using the basil, Al, try not to use the really thick stalks. Okay. At the start of the lockdown, herbs were really hard to come by, and it was absolutely fine to use the stalks. Now that we're getting a little bit more out of lockdown, if you remove the thickest bit of the stalks, they are the most bitter flavour on a vegetable. Sometimes you want a little bit of bitterness in your meal, but in this case, we'll have the best bit of the basil. So removing those before you blend them up will actually make it taste slightly better.
It's a really strong smell to it, isn't it?
Yes, lovely.
Lovely.
Here's a tip that I do, Al. So whenever I buy herbs, and I'll show it just to the camera there, I always end up buying one of those pots of herbs that have far too many. And whenever you cook, you seem to use about 1/4 of a packet of herbs. Yeah. Then you end up throwing the rest away. I absolutely hate waste. So what I do is if I use half a bag of basil like that, I'll then roll the rest up in a little freezer bag and put it in my freezer. And when I take it out the freezer, it looks like in my bowl here. Yeah. It's slightly darker than yours, but all of the flavour's still in there because I froze it on the first day. Tip for having some herbs always in your freezer that you can quickly pull out. Using dried herbs is something that you'll learn to use as you learn to cook. There is a time when dried herbs should be in place, but if you take it as a rough rule of thumb that if the herb is the main element of the flavour, try and buy fresh. Right. This pesto we're making today is basil flavoured. To use dried basil, it will not be the same.
Mike, when it says half a bunch, is that equivalent to half a pack?
Yes. If you bought a pack like that, if you bought one of the big pots that are growing on the thing, those are about 3 bunches. But if you bought a bag like that, you can treat that as a bunch, yeah.
Right.
Go too bad with the stalks, Al. Just the biggest bits will be fine.
Okay, that's done.
You can put that all in your food processor.
I've just got a little blender. That'll do, will it?
These are absolutely fine. One of the things I'll say to all the members here, if you send me a quick email, if ever you're worried about equipment, or if you see what Al and I are doing, do not start buying specialist cooking equipment. That you don't need most of it. Any little hand blender like Alan's using, it's going to be absolutely fine to make a pesto in. You might have to shake it around a bit, but it will still work. Right, when that's in there, Al,
yep.
2 tablespoons of olive oil.
Do you measure them? Or just as a little?
I measure them with one of these measuring spoons, which you can see here. It goes over a little bit or under a little bit. I never go mad.
So two of them. So 4 for
2
me.
2 tablespoons of olive oil.
And then double that for 2 people.
Yeah, 4 for you.
Okay, that's it.
We're going to talk about, later on in the series, I'll reserve some time to talk about oils. And obviously they do have a calorific impact. They are also a considerably important flavour enhancer. The strongest of all oils in terms of flavour is a virgin olive oil. It tastes the most of the olives, it's the darkest colour, and it has a particular flavour. If a recipe calls for olive oil and you're going to eat it as it is, then you must use olive oil. If we've got any members out there that are interested in oils, then I can send them some things. But one thing you must never cook with, if you can help it, is a vegetable oil that is not made of only one vegetable. So anything you see that says blended vegetable oil on it, do not buy it. It will have carcinogens in it. It will have other things that burn, very high temperature burning, but it's not the best for your health. So until the recipes start saying what they want, because we'll see a change coming up in a minute, but if they say olive oil and you're going to eat it, then use olive oil. And we're going to eat this because this is going to be in the pesto. We're not going to cook with it. So when you've got the oil and the basil in there, you need a pinch of salt. Now a pinch of salt really means a pinch of salt. Al, is that a grinder, that?
Yeah, I just did half a turn. Is that right?
Okay, do one more half turn. People tend not to put enough salt in. It's not that bad for you if you have small amounts. This is getting divided by 2. And if you'll see on the TV, chefs always use loads of salt. Now, obviously, there's a balance to be struck, and it's all about flavour. Every little bit of salt will make things taste more. They will enhance the taste of whatever you're eating. But you don't want to go mad. A little crack of pepper. I put 2 in mine.
Okay.
Right. Now we need to blend it up. Oh no, first of all, sorry, completely forgot the sherry vinegar. 1 tablespoon of sherry vinegar. Now with all vinegars, anything that's got acid in it will make things taste better. It's one of the things that people, when they're cooking at home, get wrong. When people are cooking at home, they tend to cook for whatever function they need. So if they want to get fuel after a workout, they'll eat chicken and tomatoes because they want to be healthy and they want to have some protein. They want to have a little bit of something that's sweeter like a tomato but isn't a fruit. They want to have all these sort of things. If you don't use things like vinegars, a little bit of salt and other things in your food, it will not taste as nice. It's purely for taste. There's virtually no meal a chef will cook that doesn't have some vinegar in it, or a lemon, or something else with acid in it. And that's just because it will make things taste nicer. Now we have to blend this up, Al, which isn't going to be good for a video, because you're not going to be able to hear anything.
No worries. Any water or anything going there, or just good to go as it is?
You can put a drop of water in it, but what we'll do is we'll blend it up first, and then if it's really thick, we'll put a drop of water in and we'll blend it again.
Okay.
How did that go out?
Yeah, just put a little bit of water in there. It's a bit
Yeah.
thick.
How's it looking now, Al? So what I've got on mine now is mine coats the side of the jar.
Yeah.
If I move it around slowly, but it generally falls to the bottom. So it's a sort of thick liquid.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you can actually open it up and taste it. And what you're looking for is a basil flavour that has a finish of vinegar. So when
you still see a bit of leaves in there, so that will be completely smooth.
Yeah, but don't go mad. Give it one more whiz out, but don't go mad. It'll be nice on the salad anyway.
Right, that took a little bit of time to churn up, but
Right?
we've got it. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, okay, cool. Right, so the next phase is to create a breadcrumb mix. Now, as you're about to find out, Al, doing breadcrumbs is incredibly messy.
Very good.
The reason for that is that everything ends up getting covered in the breadcrumbs. So this is a good idea on the tea towel. I've got the same tea towel actually as you. So what we're going to do here is we're going to do what's called the wet hand, dry hand method, which is what I'm going to teach you in a minute. But first of all, we need a bowl with our cracked egg in it, or in your case, 2 eggs. You might not need 2 eggs, but we'll see how you go. And then a bowl with the breadcrumbs in. Actually, I need to grab a fork. Let me just get a fork. Just beat up the eggs lightly. It's not a science, this, Al. Basically, we're only using the egg to make the breadcrumbs stick to the cheese. So actually, as long as they're beaten up a bit, and as long as you've got a system in place, it's absolutely fine.
Okay.
Next, take your goat's cheese and you need to cut it into 4 circles. That's cutting across lengthways.
Cut into what? So cut 4.
Let me see your goat's cheese. Is it square or is it round, Al?
It's square.
Oh, it's square. Okay, yeah, same as mine. So what you do is to cut. You're going to do the whole packet. That packet's 120 grams or something, is it, Al?
125, yeah.
Yeah. So there'll be some wastage, so don't drive yourself mad, because working with goat's cheese is quite difficult.
Yeah.
Because it's going to be soft cheese.
Into 4 quarters.
8 for you, Al. 8 slices.
That's quite soft.
Sorry?
It's quite soft in this one.
So if you can't do 8, just do 6, but see how you get on.
This way. got 8.
Right. So when I say the wet hand, dry hand method, Al, I'm going to have to keep an eye here. But if you look at what I'm doing here, I pick up my first piece, and I'm going to use my left hand as the wet hand. I place it into the egg, and I turn it over, and now this left hand has got egg on it.
Yeah.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop it into the breadcrumbs, and I'm going to use my right hand to toss the breadcrumbs over the egg. So now I can put it on my plate, and I have one breadcrumbed piece of cheese. If you do it the other way round, your hands will end up going into the egg, then into the breadcrumbs, and all your fingers are going to be completely covered in breadcrumbs. So I go with my left hand, I go into here, I drop it into there, make sure there's not too much egg on there. This is why I don't think you'll actually need 2 eggs. Then drop it into the breadcrumbs, and then place it on there. And I've got 4 pieces, so mine's nearly done.
Okay, so left hand puts it in the egg.
Yeah.
And like that.
Yeah.
And then
Into
drop it into the breadcrumbs with the same hand.
And with A, egg, and B, goat's cheese.
Right, I lost you for a minute there, Mike. So after the breadcrumb, it goes onto another plate, yeah?
Yeah. Or onto a chopping board now. I've just got a plate here, but yeah.
Okay, first one is done.
First one is done now. Now, obviously, the goat's cheese it's the hottest day of the year. So working with goat's cheese is quite difficult anyway, Al. So it's a good start for you. Good test.
God, this reminds me of being at school.
Yeah.
Last time I cooked something like this. All right. Number 3. Number 4. How long have you been cooking for, Mike? Right, it's gone wrong. What's
gone wrong?
Mixed up the hands, didn't I?
You mixed up the hands. I mixed up the hands on my last one. I just didn't say anything.
Right. Okay, 2 more.
Looks good, Al. Looks good.
Coming along. Last one. You weren't wrong about it being messy.
No. And if both hands get like that, then everything just goes completely wrong in the kitchen.
Right. That last one's a bit of a mess, but we've got 8.
Well done for getting 8 out of that. I thought it might be a 7 or a 6 job, Al, to be honest, but still.
Right, just wash my hands.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Well, that's it, really. We've done the 2 difficult bits. We're obviously going to fry the goat's cheese at the end. But the next thing we need to do is to quickly think about how we're going to plate the food. So we need to prepare the Mangetout and the tomatoes. Now, this is a sort of warm salad. So I'm going to quarter my tomatoes and put them on my plate because I want a small bite of tomato. And I want the tomato to be across the dish. If you only halve your cherry tomatoes, you will get big bites of tomato, but not very often. And this will eat nicer if the cherry tomatoes are all the way through it. So I'm quartering mine.
So 10 in total for you?
Yeah, I did that, yeah. 10 for you, Al, 5 for me.
Okay.
Perfect. So I'd actually put those on the plates you're going to be eating them in, or if you're going to toss the whole salad in a bowl, you can put it into a big bowl, but it's entirely up to you, Al.
So put these ready on the plate?
Yeah, I've actually put mine on my plate. I know I'm going to mix it with the Mangetout in a minute, but that's fine.
Just need to do a couple more because we lost a few.
Ah, that's all right.
Need a dog. Leave her up for that.
Feed the dog.
Okay. Okay.
Excellent, excellent. Right, it doesn't say to do this in the original recipe, but because we're making a warm salad with warm goat's cheese, yes, the tomatoes are cold, well, I'm actually going to suggest that we blanch these Mangetout. You can eat a Mangetout raw, and they are tasty and crunchy, but they have quite a bite to them, and that bite might make this. What you don't want to do with vegetables is you don't want to boil them out of existence. The fibre in them is good for you, the flavour's good. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a technique that a lot of chefs do, which is where you blanch food. It's a sort of steam rather than a boil, and it's only for a minute or two, just to take the edge off them. And the way I do that is I put about I don't know whether you can see that, but about a litre of water in a pan.
Yeah.
And I turn it on to the highest heat I can.
Okay.
Which on my turbo hob is very hot. Now, if you've got a gas hob, it will also be very hot.
Yeah.
Won't take hardly any time at all for that to boil away. So you can just lob the Mangetout straight in that pan.
Once the water's boiling, yeah?
And it will just come up to the boil, and it will steam as it comes up to the boil. And we're only talking about a minute here.
Is it just enough water to cover the pan?
Yes, exactly that, Al. Exactly that. Absolutely. Well,
to boil before?
Sorry?
Am I waiting for that to boil?
No, you can put them in now. I mean, I put mine in while it boiled.
Yeah. Okay.
Because it's such a small amount of water, it will boil really quickly.
So for these, we need 200 grams for me, yeah?
Yeah. Yeah, my bag of them was actually 200 grams. I don't know how much yours is.
Yeah, exactly the same. No wastage.
As you can see in my one now, if you look at the screen,
yeah,
mine are sort of already starting to boil and soak thing up. So I'll probably only do mine for about another 5-10 seconds. And then I'll just lob them in a colander and we'll fry off the goat's cheese while they just sit in the colander draining. They'll stay a little bit warm and they'll just be a little bit nicer to eat.
It's heating up.
Oh, it won't take long to heat that up. I'll get my handy, always available chef's tea towel. So use the same pan for when we fry the goat's cheese. Yes, Al. Now, really, you should have that tucked in. If you're going to do the proper chef's thing, you should have that tucked in a little bit there.
Well, this is a different one. The other one's covered in breadcrumbs and eggs.
Excellent, excellent. Maybe we'll have to get you a Challenge Life apron now.
That's good. Well, as I was saying to you last week, it's only really been in the later years where I've had a go at a little bit of cooking. And I always used to be chicken, broccoli, rice, just eating for fuel or for pure body composition. But as you've got a bit older and you realise there's more to life than just that, you are looking for food with a bit more taste to it. So.
Absolutely. And also, like you hinted at, that's all right for someone like yourself who's super dedicated. That's probably done now.
Yeah, turn it off.
Yeah, just put it in the colander, straight into the colander.
Straight into the blender?
No, into the colander, into the whatever you're going to use to drain it. Have you got a sieve or a colander?
Sieve.
Put it over there, it's fine.
Right, that's done.
Yeah, I mean, you see, the advantage of someone like you, Al, is because you're so focused on your training that you're eating your chicken, your broccoli. A regular member of the Challenge Life group needs to stay on a healthy lifestyle for a long period of time.
That's right.
You can do 4 weeks of chicken and rice every day with 100 grams of rice and 200 grams of chicken, so that you can have perfect carbs, protein. But eventually you're going to be crying out for something that tastes nicer. You're going to go out, or worst case scenario, you're going to get a takeaway or something like that. Then you're starting to reintroduce lots of bad foods very quickly. So the main thing is to get something that you can actually do long term.
Yeah.
Frying the oil out. Are you ready to fry your cheese?
Yep, sounds like a plan.
Now you need 2 tablespoons of olive oil in your pan. Make sure your pan is dry, please, Al, because I don't want you to get burnt. If there's any water in that pan, you could get burnt.
Yeah, all good. So 2 tablespoons in.
I'm only going to use 1. You're putting 2 tablespoons in. I'm putting 1 in. Now, I don't know whether you can see that, but you'll definitely be able to see that on the big video. I'm actually going to use avocado oil for this. Now, as I said, later on in the series, we will talk about oils. Earlier, we used olive oil because we're going to eat that pesto, so we want the flavour of olive oil. When you want the most healthy, best oils you can get, then you need to start doing some reading on what you can A, afford, and what you can B, have as a choice. But pure avocado oil with no additives is the best oil I've ever found to fry with.
I've got one of them there as well. It's never been used though.
It's an absolute health food winner. So I'm going to fry my little bad boys in a tablespoon of that.
Yeah.
When you're getting avocado oil, please check the labels, people, because if it says it's blended with other vegetables, there'll be hardly any avocado in it. You need it to be 100% avocado, which is just get a good brand.
Yeah, that's what I've got. Looks good.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we want is a medium-high heat, Al, to heat the oil up to. Now mine's out of 10. My one's out of 10. So I'm going to go for a 6.5 on mine. Yours is a gas hob, Al. So you want to have the highest flame knocked down a bit.
Okay.
And then let the oil come up to temperature.
Yep.
When cooking with oils, the secret is to not put anything in cold oil. And the reason for that is it will take longer for it to cook, but in that time, the oil will soak into the food. And you will get food that tastes of oil. What you want is the oil to be exactly the right temperature, in this case quite hot, so that when you put it in, it cooks it for a minute, or in this case 2 minutes, and then you take it out and there isn't much oil on the food. In fact, you'll see afterwards there should be some oil left in your pan. You won't use all of that 2 tablespoons.
How do you know when it's come to heat?
Well, you don't, other than putting your hand over the top of it, not in it. But if you give it a swirl round, you'll see that it goes very, very thin. Hot oil is much quicker at moving than slow oil. If you have some little breadcrumbs on your plate, Al, here's a good tip. On your plate where your goat's cheese are, do you have any breadcrumbs that are just loose?
Yep.
So put one of those in the oil.
Mm-hmm. I've actually got a whole bowl.
Yeah, so put a breadcrumb in the oil. Mine's not hot enough. And when you put it in there, you should see some bubbles form around the outside of the breadcrumb.
Yeah.
That means it's getting there. So it's 2 minutes on each side, Al.
2 minutes on each side.
Yeah. But what we're looking for is a golden brown, and that's why we use breadcrumbs. Now we have to hope at this point, because it's so hot today, that the goat's cheese doesn't melt completely before we've got it out of the pan. How'd that go in there, Al? Did that go in okay?
Yep. So far, so good. Still intact.
So good. So now we're going to use the remainder of our time to put the Mangetout together with the tomatoes on a plate. Now try not to get too much water on there, so give your colander a good shake off. Because there'll still be some water on those Mangetout.
See, that's one thing I've learned today. I didn't know what that was called. I thought it was a sieve.
Yeah, well, you can call it a sieve as well. I tend to call a sieve the one with the wire mesh.
So just mixing these up.
Yeah, absolutely. So that it looks nice and so that it will eat quite evenly. Normally at this stage, I would recommend putting some salt on there because it will make the Mangetout taste much nicer and the tomatoes taste much fresher. But we're going to put the pesto on. And if you remember, we already had salt in the pesto.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. Nearly done on the first 2 minutes now. How are the goat's cheese looking for you?
They're looking golden brown. Is that the idea?
Right, give them a quick flip. Now try not to lose your goat's cheese. How's that going now?
Yeah, looking a bit toasty.
Nice.
Okay.
Right, we've got about a minute left, so there's still time to put our pesto, which we prepared earlier, on top of the Mangetout and the tomatoes. And you really just want to scatter a bit around. You don't want to go mad, but it will taste delicious, especially when the goat's cheese melts in there.
So this on top of the
I'll
Mangetout.
show you mine on there. Yeah, I've just put it on top of the bit of the Mangetout and the tomatoes. Right, I've got a piece of kitchen roll out.
Yep.
And what I'm going to do is I'm going to lift my goat's cheese out and put it onto a kitchen roll, just so that we can get some of the on there. There's no need to eat that.
So these are good to come out now, yeah?
Yep. They should have turned a sort of golden brown now.
Yep.
Doesn't matter if some cheese leaks out because it's going to be delicious, that bit of cheese that leaks out.
If one side's a little, just turn it over, do you?
Yeah. When you're presenting your food, there's many a trick you can do to get all chefy and make things look good. But just go with the eye.
Yeah.
Once they've been on, just add a little second on there, then you need to place them on top of the 4 inches of each plate. I'll show you mine there.
Very nice. So they go on top.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. I've probably gone a bit too big of a plate.
That's all right. That's all right. And if you notice now, there should have been some oil left in your pan.
Yeah.
Any in there? So there was some in there, was there, Al?
Yeah, not a lot though.
Not a lot. So basically, you're probably under the calories for the meal because you only put 2 tablespoons in there and there's probably a teaspoon less left still in there. So when you fry, as long as you get the right temperature on the pan, a lot of the oil will stay in the pan and it won't go into the food.
Yeah, you were right about the egg. I didn't need too
No.
much for that. But also I've got a lot of breadcrumbs left over as well. So.
Yeah, and the breadcrumbs, of course, are not the greatest for you. They just add delicious taste when you fry it, so it's not a bad thing. Yeah. What does it taste like, Al?
Can I go? Let's have a go.
Yeah.
Yeah, really nice. Very nice. Yeah, very good. That pesto flavour is unbelievable.
Yeah, the pesto's great. Eh? It's the vinegar and the basil combined. I mean, a little bit of oil, sure. But really, you're tasting a sherry vinegar combined with the basil that lifts the cheese and the tomatoes to another level. And it's good to have the Mangetout in there because you just get good fibre. It's good for you.
Yeah, really good. Because initially we were talking about using sugar snaps, which I hadn't heard of before.
Absolutely.
No, you could use either Mangetout or...
You could use either. You could also... You can actually make salads like this with just normal peas. You know, if you haven't got something in your cupboard, what you're eating here is a flavour of tomatoes, basil, cherry vinegar, and some goat's cheese with some crispy edge to it. What the green stuff is doing is it's balancing the plate. It's making it more neutral. Now, all green vegetables, or most green vegetables, have a sweet edge to them. So as long as you're using something out the pea family, you could use peas themselves, just frozen peas. You could use Mangetout. You could use these sugar snaps that we couldn't get hold of at this time of year. Any of those will work absolutely perfectly. You need to stay away from things in the onion family. So you shouldn't use a green vegetable like a leek. But it doesn't matter. As long as you use something from the pea family, it'll be absolutely delicious because they all have a slight sweet finish to them.
That's the first time I've ever made any sort of sauce or dip or anything like that. I can, the flavours or something.
And it just enhances the flavour so much.
Yeah, I think if I was to do that again, I might try to use even smaller chunks of the goat's cheese. So I make them a little bit smaller and dunk them in.
Yeah, they break apart when you're frying out.
Is that the problem? So
I had a little practice yesterday, and I used cubed goat's cheese and turned a little bit into a goat's cheese soup.
Yeah, and I think also just the one egg as well would be
the one egg.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Superb, mate.
Right now,
love that. Go and pass it on to the head of the house and see.
Head of the house. Get a review for us. Get an early review out.
All right, superb. Really enjoyed that.
Nice one, Alan.
We'll do it again next week.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll see you next week. Cheers.
Cheers, Mike. Take care.